In the heart of downtown, where the hustle and bustle of city life never ceased, there was a small, nondescript apartment building. Inside, a young woman named Emily found herself in desperate need of a roommate to help cover the rent. She posted an ad online and soon found a girl named Sarah who seemed perfect. At first, everything was fine. Sarah was quiet but friendly, and she kept mostly to herself. However, strange things began to happen. Emily would hear whispering coming from Sarah's room late at night, and sometimes she swore she saw shadows moving under the crack of Sarah's door. One day, Emily came home early from work and found Sarah's door ajar. Curiosity got the better of her, and she peeked inside. What she saw made her blood run cold. There was nobody there, yet the room looked as if it had been lived in for years. Clothes were strewn about, food was rotting on the counter, and there were strange symbols painted on the walls in what looked like blood. Terrified, Emily confronted Sarah, who simply laughed and said, "You can't see him, can you? He's always here watching." Emily moved out the next day, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching her, even in her new apartment. She never found out who or what was living with Sarah, but she knew she never wanted to find out. Jake thought he had hit the jackpot when he found an affordable apartment near his university. The only downside was that he would have to share it with a guy named Tom, whom he had never met. Tom seemed normal enough at first, if a bit reclusive. But as the weeks went by, Jake noticed odd behaviors. Tom would spend hours in front of a mirror in his room, muttering to himself in a language Jake couldn't understand. Whenever Jake tried to ask him about it, Tom would brush him off with a nervous laugh. One night, Jake woke up to the sound of chanting coming from Tom's room. Curiosity getting the better of him, he crept down the hall and peeked inside. What he saw made his blood turn to ice. Tom was standing in front of the mirror, but his reflection was not his own. Instead, it was a twisted, grotesque version of himself, grinning maliciously back at him. Before Jake could react, the reflection reached out and grabbed him, pulling him into the mirror's depths. Jake woke up screaming in his own bed, drenched in sweat. He tried to convince himself it was just a nightmare, but when he looked in the mirror, he saw the faint outline of a handprint on the glass, a chilling reminder of what had happened. Emma was thrilled to find an apartment with such affordable rent, especially in a city as expensive as New York. She moved in with her new roommate, Lily, who seemed friendly enough. But as the days passed, Emma began to notice something strange. Lily had a habit of disappearing for hours at a time, only to return with no explanation. Emma brushed it off at first, assuming Lily had a busy social life. But one day, when Lily was out, Emma stumbled upon something that made her blood run cold. In Lily's room, she found a journal filled with entries detailing Emma's every move. Lily had been watching her, studying her, even copying her mannerisms and clothing choices. Emma realized with horror that Lily wasn't just her roommate. She was her doppelganger. Terrified, Emma tried to confront Lily, but she denied everything, insisting Emma was overreacting. Emma knew she had to get out of there, but every time she tried to leave, she would find herself back in the apartment, as if drawn there by some unseen force. She realized too late that Lily wasn't just her doppelganger, she was her replacement, and now Emma was trapped in a nightmare from which she could never escape. Days turned into weeks, and Emma felt like she was losing her mind. No matter how hard she tried to leave the apartment, she always ended up back inside, as if the world outside no longer existed. One day, as Emma sat in her room, contemplating her fate, she heard a knock on the door. It was Lily, or at least someone who looked like Lily, but there was something different about her, something off. The new Lily smiled sweetly and invited Emma to come with her, promising that they could leave the apartment together. Desperate for freedom, Emma agreed, but as soon as they stepped outside, she realized her mistake. The world outside was not the bustling city she remembered. It was empty, desolate, a wasteland of crumbling buildings and swirling mist. And standing in the midst of it all was another Emma, the real Emma. The two women stared at each other in horror, realizing that they were not just roommates, but alternate versions of each other trapped in a twisted reality. And as they stood there, the world began to shift and change around them, trapping them in an endless cycle of horror and despair. As Emma and her doppelganger stared at each other in shock, they heard a sinister laughter echoing through the empty streets. From the shadows emerged a figure, tall and cloaked in darkness. "I see my little game has brought you both together," the figure hissed, its voice echoing like nails on a chalkboard. Emma's doppelganger stepped forward, her eyes filled with rage. "What is the meaning of this? Why have you trapped us here?" The figure chuckled, a sound that sent shivers down Emma's spine. "You were chosen for a purpose, my dear. You see, I feed on the fear and despair of mortals, and you two are the perfect vessels to provide it." Emma's heart sank as she realized the truth. They were nothing more than pawns in some twisted entity's game, doomed to suffer for all eternity. But she refused to give up hope. With a steely determination, Emma turned to her doppelganger. "We need to find a way out of here, together." Her doppelganger nodded, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. They knew it wouldn't be easy, but they had to try. For days, they searched the desolate landscape, facing countless horrors and obstacles along the way. But through sheer willpower and determination, they discovered a hidden passage leading to a realm beyond the grasp of their tormentor. As they stepped through the portal, they felt a sense of freedom unlike anything they had ever known. The world around them was vibrant and alive, a stark contrast to the bleak wasteland they had left behind. But their journey was far from over. They knew they couldn't rest until they had put an end to the entity that had trapped them. With newfound courage, Emma and her doppelganger set out to confront their tormentor once and for all. They faced trials and tribulations beyond imagination, but in the end, they emerged victorious, banishing the entity back to the darkness from whence it came. As they stood together victorious, Emma and her doppelganger shared a knowing look. They may have been alternate versions of each other, but they had formed a bond stronger than any force in the universe. And as they stepped back into the world, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as friends and allies against the darkness.